Hardworking but poor. The average person works 90,000 hours in their lifetime. That's 45 years of showing up, putting in the effort, doing what they were told would build a life. And at the end of those 90,000 hours, the median American retirement savings sits at under $87,000, not per year, total, for everything that comes after. This isn't a story about lazy people. The people this is about work extremely hard. They always have. That's precisely the problem. Effort, applied in the wrong direction, doesn't build wealth. It builds the convincing appearance of progress, while the actual gap stays exactly where it is. In the next 8 minutes, you'll understand the 4 mechanisms that turn hard work into financial stagnation, and the specific redirections that change the outcome. Picture this. You get to work early, you stay late, you cover for colleagues, you solve problems nobody asked you to solve. You are, by any visible measure, the hardest working person in the room. And at your annual review, you get a 3% raise. I just need to keep proving myself. If I work hard enough, they'll have to notice eventually. 1 more year of this, and it'll be my turn. What you're experiencing has a name, the proximity trap. It's the belief that being physically close to value creation, working inside a system that generates wealth, means that wealth will eventually flow toward you. It won't. Not automatically. Not as a reward for effort. Economist Thorstein Veblen observed over a century ago that in most economic systems, the people closest to the actual production of value are systematically the least compensated for it. The person who builds the product earns less than the person who sells it. The person who delivers the service earns less than the person who packages and prices it. Hard work inside someone else's value system produces income. It rarely produces wealth. Those are 2 different things, and confusing them is the first mechanism that keeps hard-working people poor. Proximity to value is not the same as ownership of value. That distinction is where everything starts. Here's a situation you'll recognize immediately. You have a system, a routine, a way of doing things that you've refined over years until it runs like clockwork. You are genuinely efficient, faster, cleaner, better organized than most people around you. Your output per hour is high, your process is tight, and somehow none of that efficiency is producing compounding results. I just need to optimize this further. If I can get more done in less time, that's more value created. More value should mean more return eventually. This is the efficiency illusion, the assumption that getting better at a task increases its economic value proportionally. It doesn't. Economic value is determined by scarcity and demand, not by the quality of execution alone. You can become the most efficient person in the world at something the market doesn't particularly need, and your efficiency produces exactly nothing additional. Psychologist Barry Schwartz at Swarthmore College spent years studying what he called the paradox of skill, the observation that in many fields, becoming significantly better than average produces diminishing marginal returns past a certain threshold, because the bottleneck isn't skill, it's positioning. It's what you're applying the skill to. It's whether the market you're serving has the capacity to pay for the level of skill you've developed. Working harder on the wrong thing is just a faster way to go nowhere. There's an old economics joke that goes, a worker walks into a factory, works twice as hard, produces twice as much, and gets paid exactly the same. The punchline is that this isn't actually a joke. It's just called Tuesday. Think about the last time you got really good at something at work. You developed a skill. You became the go-to person for it. People relied on you for it specifically. And then, slowly, or sometimes suddenly, you noticed that your value in that role was not increasing. If anything, it felt more precarious, because the moment you became replaceable by someone cheaper, or by a system, or by a process, your years of expertise became a liability rather than an asset. But I have so much experience in this. That has to count for something. Nobody knows this system better than I do. This is the substitution economy at work. In most employment and service contexts, skills that are learnable are ultimately substitutable. And the harder you work to become excellent at a learnable skill, the more you've invested in something that the market will eventually commoditize. Labour economist David Autor at MIT has documented this pattern extensively across the last 4 decades, what he calls routine-biased technological change. The jobs and skills that reward pure effort and execution the most are precisely the ones most vulnerable to substitution. Not because the work isn't valuable, because the work is valuable enough that someone will eventually build a system to do it cheaper. Hard work builds expertise. Expertise in substitutable skills builds a ceiling, not a floor. This one is the quietest of the 4, and probably the most expensive. You work hard, you earn money, and then, almost automatically, the money leaves. Not on luxuries necessarily. On life, on the cost of maintaining the capacity to keep working. The commute, the clothes, the food, the recovery, the tools. On the lifestyle that expanded gradually to match the income that was supposed to be building something. I'll start saving seriously once I'm making a little more. Right now, everything just goes back into staying functional. There's never quite enough left over to invest. Economist Robert Frank at Cornell documented what he calls expenditure cascades, the mechanism by which income increases trigger lifestyle expansions that consume the additional income almost entirely, leaving the savings rate essentially unchanged, regardless of how much more is earned. The hardest working people often experience this most acutely, because the physical and psychological cost of sustained high effort creates genuine needs for recovery, comfort, and reward that absorb the surplus before it can compound. The reinvestment gap isn't a discipline problem, it's a structural problem. Income that passes through your hands without being redirected into assets doesn't build wealth. It builds a more expensive version of the same position you were already in. Working hard generates income. Only redirected income generates wealth. The gap between those two things is where most hard-working people live their entire financial lives. None of this means effort is worthless. It means effort directed only at execution, at doing more, faster, better, longer, without being redirected toward ownership, positioning, and reinvestment, produces a very specific and very stable kind of stuck. 3 redirections that change the math own something in the value chain, not just a position in it. This week, identify one thing you currently do for someone else that produces value you don't capture. A skill, a system, a relationship, a result. Then ask one question. What is the smallest version of this I could offer directly to a market, rather than through an employer or intermediary? You don't have to act on it immediately, but you need to see it. Most hard-working people have never looked at their own labor from the outside. Redirect before it disappears. Set one financial boundary this week that is non-negotiable. Not a savings goal, a structural redirect. An automatic transfer that moves money into an asset before it becomes available to spend. The amount is almost irrelevant at the start. The mechanism is what matters. Reinvestment has to be structural, or it doesn't happen, because the reinvestment gap isn't a motivation problem. It's a systems problem, and systems beat motivation every single time. Position toward scarcity, not toward excellence. Identify one skill or area where you currently work hard to be excellent among many. Then identify one adjacent area where that excellence is scarce. The goal is not to become better at what you already do, it's to find the context where what you already do is rare. That context shift, not additional effort, is what breaks the efficiency illusion. The problem was never that you didn't work hard enough. The proximity trap kept your effort inside someone else's value system. The efficiency illusion sent you deeper into a ceiling instead of through it. The substitution economy made your expertise a target instead of a shield, and the reinvestment gap converted every raise into a more expensive version of the same position. This week, pick one, just one of the 3 redirections, the smallest possible version of it, not a plan, an action. Hard work got you here. Direction is what gets you out.